Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here with the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we're going to be talking about how to write observations in light of different course readings and how to reflect on materials and the chosen topics. We're going to be looking at this through the lens of a specific assignment in our conflict management and conflict resolution program from CONR 610, but the general principles will apply to many other assignments as well. If you're not familiar with the ACU Online Writing Center, especially if you're new to ACU, welcome. We're happy to have you here. The Online Writing Center works with students in just about all of ACU's online programs, and we provide webinars such as this. We have one-on-one feedback sessions you can sign up for, either asynchronous, meaning you upload your paper, we email you feedback, or real-time, in which case you'd schedule a phone or Zoom appointment. Both of these are done through our online scheduling system, WC Online. More on that later. And we also provide a variety of resources, including course paper templates to help with the formatting, sample papers for some programs, many webinars, how-to guides on a number of things, as well as answering questions. So if you run into a writing-related thing and you're not sure what to do, or perhaps have a question about APA formatting, you can always send us an email. It helps to be as specific as possible, so if it relates to an assignment, tell us what assignment. You can just include a link from the Instructure Canvas system, or you can tell us, CONR 610, Week 2, Assignment 1, and we can find it. And give us as much detail as possible about what you're trying to do or trying to understand, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. The general process for scheduling an appointment starts with scheduling the time. So you do this through the my.acu.edu system, and through that you have a link to access our scheduling system. You can schedule a time. If you're scheduling a asynchronous appointment, by the time that appointment rolls around, you want to make sure you upload a copy of your course paper, and then we'll send you feedback generally within 24 hours of the scheduled time. If it's, say, Easter weekend, there might be a little bit more of a delay because we ask people to work on that holiday. I want to give them a little bit of latitude, but generally within 24 hours. And if it's a real-time appointment, of course, you'll be having your appointment at that specific scheduled time. We have a whole suite of webinars coming in for the Spring 2 term. However, something you should know is that we always will record and archive our webinars on the Online Writing Center website. And if you go to our Writing Webinars page, at the top there'll be a schedule of all the webinars being offered for the term. But below that, you'll scroll down. At the very bottom, there's a complete alphabetical catalog of our many webinars. And in the middle, there's this tabbed guide where we sorted by the course, by the program. So if you went to, say, CONR here on the tab, that would show you all of the webinars that tie in with specific CONR courses, including listing the assignments. So it's a great way to see, do we have something related to the class that you're taking? And we update that throughout the semester. So, for example, this webinar will be added to the CONR tab under CONR 610, so you can find it easily later. Some other resources that may be of help. We have a APA course paper template that you'll see me using. I strongly recommend downloading that now, so if you're watching this on video, you can pause the video, grab that now so you have it ready. We post our videos not just to our website, but also to our YouTube channel, and we have an Online Writing Center blog on various topics. Alright, so our main objectives today, we are going to be focusing first on looking at some common reflection strategies before looking specifically at this assignment in CONR 610 that does ask that you do reflections on the readings and a few other things, and then we'll finish with talking about some principles for outline and drafting. So reflection strategies. There are many programs that require that you do reflections, and often it will come back in different ways, so it's always helpful to pay attention to the specific instructions. But let's start out by talking about the whys. Now, one of the reasons to write a reflection is to be able to revisit material and see what has changed, what new understandings have you reached, what new insights or different insights do you have, how has your position changed. And so in this chart here, we see part of a common way of understanding this as the experiential learning cycle, where we move from having our concrete experience and we start experimenting with something. So this is going counterclockwise right now. And from that, we start thinking about things in the abstract sense of trying to conceptualize, okay, what is going on here? And then we step back and we reflect on that or give our observations. And then that moves, and it can move more than one way. You can go back to abstraction, like, okay, hold on, let's change that. We can say, okay, well, so because of that, we're going to do something specific, something concrete. And this is a way to learn from your experiences, especially in a program like conflict resolution, where you are building up a base of experience and understanding that will inform future interventions, future counseling, future mediation. Now, another way to understand reflection, and I quote, "Reflection allows students to make sense of material or experience in relation to oneself, others, and the conditions that shape the material or experience, to reimagine material or experience for future personal or social benefit." This is, by the way, coming from Ryan 2013. And when you are writing about reflection, it's not just writing your thoughts. You can also reference sources like this or charts like this diagram showing the experiential learning cycle. You can reference that and use that as part of your discussion, saying, well, according to Kolb 1984, this follows, so here's what I did, according to that model. Or, so Ryan 2013 stated that one of the purposes of reflection is to reimagine material for future personal benefit. And so in my own life, I plan on doing this, or I expect to do this, or I see this other thing, as suggested by Ryan 2013. So some reflection strategies to describe whatever it is you're reflecting on. It could be an event, something that happened, an experience. It could be something that you got, for example, a course reading. That would count as an artifact here. To contextualize it by discussing relevant literature. So you can certainly discuss sources in relation to the other sources, and you've got 3 readings this week for CONR 610. To contextualize it with course objectives. Okay. Describe and explain pre-reflection practices. This is, what were you doing before the readings, before the reflections? And what's changed? Do you expect something will be easier? Hopefully not harder. How or why is this important? Now, at this point, let's take a closer look at the specific assignment we're going to be focusing on. So this is from CONR 610, the Managing Workplace Conflict course, and we're looking specifically at the nature of conflict course. And the instructions say, okay, do the readings and discuss the provided list of topics in relation to the readings. So we need to reflect on the nature of conflict in terms of how conflict is defined, types of conflict, consequences of conflict, and the arenas in which that conflict occurs. To describe 2 models, to refer to a specific diagram when discussing 2 prompts, which constructive behavior comes most naturally to you, and which destructive behavior most often limits your effectiveness as a leader. And then that's wrapped up with an introduction and a conclusion. And all of this should be in a paper as described here. It's going to have a cover page with your name, course number, assignment title, word count, and date. All right, all of those except the word count are standard as part of the APA course paper template. The word count, that will just be a quick addition. The paper should be 1,800 to 2,000 words, and you might ask, well, wait, how long is that? Well, using our APA course paper template, which means 1-inch margins all around, 12-point Times New Roman font, double spaced, that's going to be about 250 words per page. So this is looking at something at roughly 7 to 8 pages of content, not counting your your cover page, not counting your references. So, around 7 to 8 pages of content here. And you see that there are a couple specific instructions here, one of which is to not count the cover page or references in your word count, not count the heading, so it's not going to be a big deal that's going to throw things off here. Have a subheading for each rubric line. More on that in a moment. Don't use direct quotes from your sources. So you can paraphrase, paraphrase and summarize, but not quote directly. And general note that writing does matter. So if you feel that writing is a weakness, or that quality control, proofreading, polishing a weakness, I'd suggest starting sooner rather than later, because that does make it easier to get feedback specifically on those things, and to spend time reviewing the material so you can look past the content at how the writing doesn't communicate clearly. There is also a rubric here that explains the grading, that shows what points are assigned to each portion of the paper. Now, if we look at this, we see that, okay, there's a little bit for the introduction and the conclusion. There's a bit for quality control at the bottom. But the majority of the points are going for these 4 sections here. Altogether, we are looking at, 70% of the grade is for this content here, the main content. There's a little bit for the introduction and conclusion, but most of the grade here goes into that. So that should be the larger aspect of the paper. Again, if we are talking around 8 pages of content here, 70% of that is going to be about 5.5, 6 pages, so it should be somewhat substantial. And it's always helpful to keep that in mind when approaching the paper. Alright, so speaking of, let's talk about how to go from the instructions to laying out your paper to make sure that you get all the things that you need to. And let's take a moment and look at a artifact here. In this case, this artifact is a figure that is referred to in the instructions. So it is showing different sorting of responses to conflict. This happens to come from page 55 of the textbook, but originally from another source. And we see that we have the constructive column, the destructive column, the active row, and the passive row. So, where are you, what are your tendencies, things like that. And if you're citing this, you'd cite it as Rund and Flanagan, 2013, page 55. Now, the assignment instructions also ask that you discuss certain models. And something to keep in mind is that the instructions in the syllabus and on the course website will give you the information you need, but it's your responsibility to make sure that it's formatted and used correctly in APA 7, which is not necessarily what's in the instructions. So if we look at here, it says describe the individual conflict competence model. Now, in much of the literature, they will capitalize the names of models in title case, as you see here. But it's actually an APA 7 rule that you should not capitalize model names in title case. You need to use sentence case. So, individual conflict competence model, parentheses, Rund, Flanagan, 2013. Or if we're discussing that other model moving from differentiation to integration to problem solving, which is a bit of a tongue twister, Folger et al., 2018. You should also keep in mind that the references that you see in the syllabus, they will include other information that is helpful for, say, ordering the book, because the ISBN gets you the exact edition that you're looking for, but we don't actually include that in APA 7 in your references list. So I've shown some of the changes you'll need to make. So if you are copy and pasting those pieces of information from the references list. Delete the ISBN numbers. For the Rund and Flanagan thing, add a space between those initials. Change conflict competent leader to lowercase so that it follows sentence case rules there. And then make sure you put them in alphabetical order. So it should look like this. Alright, now let's talk about how to do the drafting. Now I've downloaded a copy of our APA course paper template here, and it's always helpful to look and see, are there any what we call house rules, things where your instructor has asked you to do something that diverges from APA style. Now, if we look back at the specifications here, we find one of these in the very first bullet here. Create a cover page with your name, course number, assignment title, word count, and date. So word count is not on this, but it's very easy to add. And then to help make sure that you remember to put that in, I'm not only going to highlight it, but I'm going to go ahead and add a comment here. So if I'm looking through this, there's this note on two levels. There's the yellow and then this marginal comment telling me, oh, hey, I need to fill that in. Now, as far as the title of the paper is concerned, well, we can go back and look at the assignment, and it says the nature of conflict. So there's nothing wrong with having assignment 1, the nature of conflict. Yes, you can certainly give a more descriptive title, but APA style doesn't require that your titles be interesting, just that they be accurate and descriptive. So assignment 1, the nature of conflict, is fine as far as APA style is concerned. And then fill in your name. In this case, is the program at ACU, the course, the instructor, date, etc. Now, at the top of the second page here, you also need to put the assignment title here. This should be exactly the same as it is there. And you can see that it is bolded and in title case. Alright, we're going to go briefly talk about these different elements before I delete these placeholders. So, APA style emphasizes conciseness. And one of the ways to get conciseness is to get rid of redundancy. Things that are not needed, either because it's repeating or because it's sufficiently obvious. And so you'll notice that this introduction section does not have a heading that says introduction, because we know it's the very first part of the paper, therefore it is the introduction. Now, your conclusion will have a heading, but it's actually an APA rule to not include a heading called introduction at the start of your paper. So even though it is a required section for this assignment, you should not have a heading that says introduction. Alright, now you can see that there are different levels of headings to subdivide parts of larger papers. And that's a good principle that helps you organize your material and also helps you quickly count and see, alright, is this approximately the length I want it to be? And the first level, the AP level 1s, these are centered. AP level 2, they're off to the left. And much of this formatting is simplified if you use the Styles pane. So I'm on the home part of the ribbon in Word. Click on Styles pane. And because this is our APA course paper template here, it has some styles built in. So I can change the formatting of this by selecting a different style level. And you can see that, oh, I don't even need to remember that an AP level 1 is centered. If I select AP level 1, it automatically centers it for me. AP level 2, it automatically makes it flush left and bold. Capitalization you need to do on your own, but the rest it will take care of. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and delete this placeholder text. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this placeholder reference set too. Now, talked about references. In this case, the module has 3 readings from different course texts. And so it's a pretty good idea that you're going to be citing and referencing all of them. I'd even say if you're not citing and referencing them, there's something wrong, because your reflection is supposed to be grounded in the course readings. So while you certainly want to make sure that you do eventually cite all of them, as a starting point, making sure you have them in your reference list, yeah, that's a good idea. Alright, so I've got my references here. And usually when you paste something in from a website, there'll be something that's not quite right about the formatting. In this case, I've got some bullets. I don't want those, so I can change that to match destination formatting, and it's not doing it. If I go to keep text only, I lose the italics. So what can I do here? Well, one thing I can do is to select these and then apply the APA reference style. And you see that gets rid of the bullets. Now I get this hanging indent that's required for the reference section. So now all I need to do is delete that space, and yay. Unless I add more works that I'm citing, these are all the references that I need. Alright, and we'll just look through. Okay, that is in sentence case, that's in sentence case, that's in sentence case. No ISBN numbers. Looking good. If you're wondering about this, so this is considered the title, this is considered the subtitle, and you capitalize the first letter of the first word in the subtitle here. So that's why it looks that way. Okay, so let's now look at the assignment instructions. So if we just start by copy and pasting this starts to give us an idea of how to lay this out, because you have these major areas that are laid out, and we know that there's going to be introduction. That's not going to get a heading, but here we see, okay, reflect on the nature of conflict. Alright, I can just take that and make that the heading for a section. Now, how should that be formatted? Well, I need it to be in title case, so type it that way. With the rest of the formatting, just select that, and then in the Styles menu, select AP Level 1. You can see how it becomes centered and bolded. And same thing. In this case, I'm just going to call it Relevant Models. You can have something that's more informative to how you are delving into it. And then let's take a look back at that rubric for grading. Now we've got nature of conflict here. Okay, we have ICCM and the discussion of differentiation and integration. So that's the two models. Personal constructive behaviors, personal destructive behaviors. So just looking at this, I know that the instructor who's grading this is going to be looking and saying, okay, do you have a section on this? Do you go into it in depth? It is not a bad idea at all. In fact, it's a highly recommended to have a section heading that is clearly labeled as that thing that they're looking for and grading you on. So let's go ahead and make sure that this matches up. And then, of course, conclusion. Now, there's no APA rule against having a heading named conclusion. In fact, it's a strongly recommended thing to show the reader, oh, yes, we're wrapping things up now. So right now, we're just creating an outline that lists the things that you need to write about in the areas that you need to. Now, this introduction is probably just going to be a paragraph or so. It should lay out what you're discussing in the order that you discuss it. So you're going to talk about the nature of conflict, reflect on two models, talk about these behaviors, talk about those behaviors, and so add a sentence listing each of those things, and then an introduction to the paper as a whole, and that's going to get you a paragraph. Now here, looking at this, see, okay, well, there's going to be an introduction paragraph that outlines the content of this section, which is going to be, listing these things. And then and you know that there are 3 readings, and perhaps I'll include my own self-definition. And okay, types of conflict, consequences, areas in which conflict occurs, and basically you're just expanding this and saying, okay, so actually here's a list of stuff that I should be writing about, and so when I go do the course readings, I know I'm going to be taking notes on these things, and that leads to a more efficient reading and preparation process, because you know, oh, this is going to be useful. I need to talk about that because the instructions say I should be reflecting on that, so let me pay attention for those specific things. And so you can go ahead and discuss these here. Now this is more a reminder for what happens here. And as you finish a particular instruction, you can go ahead and use the crossout or another tool to mark that it's done, so you don't lose any time or attention on that. And something like this, which is not saying write about that in here, but this is a note for the next section, I'll go ahead and highlight that. Alright, now if we look back at the elements here, we do have this chart here, so you know that you're going to be citing this at some point. So if you could take that Rundin-Flanagan 2013 page 55 and stash that in here. Now, I may not know exactly what I'm going to write, but I know that I'm going to be referencing that chart, so I can start writing a placeholder here, referring to it by the name, and then with the formal citation. And then, so when I do come around to writing this, I know, oh, yes, I need to name drop that, and then I'll write about whatever it is I write about here. For example, I might be writing about expressing emotions, or perspective taking, perhaps. And then explain, okay, what does that mean? How does that relate to what I have been doing versus what I'm doing now? It may not have come naturally to me all the time, but you know, these are the things that some of the things that you might be writing about. So, if you prepare this sort of outline from the instructions before you do the reading, then when you come across the material that you're looking for, you can start filling bits in immediately, which takes a whole stage out where you might otherwise be doing the reading, doing the assignments, saying, hold on, which reading was that thing again? And having to go retroactively back and trying to find out where was that thing. And so it's a more efficient process if you look at, okay, what do I need to do first? Alright, that's, I think, a good point for us to wrap up today. So let's take stock of what we've discussed today. So we began by talking about common reflection strategies and the purposes of reflection, including particularly the experiential learning cycle described by Kolb. We looked at the specific assignment that we're using as a basis for this discussion, the Assignment 1, Nature of Conflict in CONR 610. We talked about how to interpret those instructions and to use them as a basis for planning and outlining your paper, as well as how to cite and reference different resources related to that. And that is, I think, a wrap here. So thank you for watching this video. We are happy to have you back for an exciting semester. And if you have any questions, you can send us an email at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu, schedule an appointment, check out our stuff online. And with that, have a great evening.